I never planned on staying this long at the corner coffee shop. It wasn't special. 3 chipped tables, an old radio that picked up more static than music, a bell above the door that rang a second too late. But it was quiet, and quiet had become a habit I couldn't break. She came in every Thursday morning. Always the same. Cardigan, hair tied back loosely, paperback tucked under her arm. She'd order black coffee, no sugar, and sit by the window as if the world outside belonged to her, not the rest of us. Took me weeks to figure out she lived 2 doors down from me. The widow with the pale green curtains and the yard no one ever touched. The first time she noticed me, I was staring too long at the way she folded her napkin, crisp edges pressed flat, as if neatness could hold something together. She looked up, caught me, and instead of frowning, she gave the smallest smile, like she was tired of pretending not to see me. "Don't you have classes at this hour?" she asked once. I shrugged. "Sometimes. Not today." She nodded like she didn't believe me, then went back to her book. But after that, the silence between us wasn't quite silence anymore. I started to expect her. The bell above the cafe door would ring, and my chest would tighten before I even looked up. Some days she'd speak first. Other days, nothing. But even nothing with her felt like something. One morning, she remembered my order before the barista did. "He takes it with 1 sugar, not 2, she said, sliding the mug toward me. I laughed under my breath. "You watching me that closely?" Her eyes flicked toward mine, then down at her cup. "Someone has to." It was a small thing, but it stayed with me. No one had said something like that in a long time. Loneliness, for me, wasn't dramatic. It was a row of unsent texts on my phone. Messages half-typed, backspaced, saved in drafts without courage to finish. It was the silence of my apartment at night, only broken by the hum of the fridge and my thoughts circling back to her, again and again. Sometimes, I'd catch her looking at me the way I looked at her. Quick, guilty glances, like we were both rehearsing something we'd never actually say. One afternoon, when the cafe was nearly empty, she leaned over her cup and whispered, "This feels dangerous." I don't know why, but I didn't hesitate. Maybe because danger, to me, finally felt alive. "Danger makes it better," I said. Her hand froze on the mug, and she stared at me longer than she should have. For a moment, I thought she might laugh or stand up and walk out. Instead, she just shook her head slowly, eyes soft but guarded, as if she was letting me see the border she never crossed. We didn't speak much after that. Not in the cafe, not on the walk home. But when I got back to my apartment that evening, I found a folded note slipped under my door. No words, just her phone number, written in careful handwriting, and a single line beneath it. "Don't make me regret this." I stood there with the note in my hand, wondering if regret was what I wanted, or if, for once, I was ready to risk it. The note sat on my kitchen counter for 3 days before I dialed the number. When she picked up, her voice was calm, almost too calm, like she'd been expecting me but hoping I wouldn't call. "Do you drink tea?" she asked. No greeting, no hesitation. That night, I stood in her kitchen for the first time. The place looked lived in but paused, like someone had moved through it years ago and never changed a thing since. A calendar hung on the wall, frozen on a month-long past. The smell of chamomile drifted through the air. She poured carefully, 2 hands on the kettle, and pushed the cup toward me without meeting my eyes. I noticed her hands shook just slightly, but she covered it by straightening a stack of unopened mail. "Don't you usually have people your age around?" she said, almost too casually. I let out a small laugh. "Not really. They don't stick." Her lips pressed together. "They should. You'll regret it later." I wanted to ask her what she regretted, but I didn't. Instead, I watched the steam rise from my cup until it faded, like it carried both of our thoughts away. She told me, almost offhand, that her husband used to fix radios. He'd take them apart piece by piece, scatter the parts across the table, and somehow put them back together like nothing had happened. I could never stand the noise in between. Her voice cracked just slightly at that last part. She covered it with a sip, but I caught it. I thought about saying something comforting, but what came out was softer, clumsier. I like the in-between. Makes the silence worth it. She glanced at me, startled, then looked away as if the wallpaper was suddenly fascinating. We sat in that silence, and I realized how much weight it carried. Not the silence of strangers, but of people who were too close to admit it. The risk sat between us two. She must have felt it. The 20 years I didn't have, the son she lost too soon, the way our lives should have stayed parallel, not crossing. I imagined what her neighbors would think if they saw me here, what my friends would say if I told them. The word forbidden echoed in my head, but it didn't feel wrong, just fragile, like glass you weren't supposed to touch but couldn't resist. I set my cup down, fingers brushing the saucer louder than they should have. She noticed. She always noticed. "Why are you here?" she asked finally. The truth rose before I could stop it. "Because you see me." I don't know why that matters so much, but it does. Her breath caught, barely but enough. She reached to gather the empty cups, and for a second her fingers grazed mine. It was nothing, it was everything. She didn't pull away. Not right away. And that, somehow, felt more dangerous than any words we'd spoken. I started stopping by her place more often, always for small things, borrowing sugar I didn't need, asking if she had a spare screwdriver. Once I offered to carry her groceries, though it was barely a bag. Excuses, thin as paper, but she let me in each time. One evening, the kettle whistled and she waved me toward the kitchen table. I sat, watching the light from the window fall across her face. The kind of light that made time feel slower. She poured tea, and her hand lingered on the rim of my cup a second too long. Or maybe I just wanted it to. "You shouldn't be here this much," she said suddenly, not looking at me. I forced a smile. "Do you want me to stop?" Her eyes flicked up, then down again. "That's not what I said." The air tightened. I thought about reaching for the cup, but my fingers stayed on the table, restless, tapping once against the wood. She noticed, of course. She always noticed. A knock at the door broke it. A neighbor, older man, friendly enough, asked if she had jumper cables. I stepped back, let her handle it, but the man's glance toward me lingered too long. He left with a smile that didn't feel like a smile. She shut the door quietly, leaned against it. "This is what I mean." "What?" I asked. "People, they see things." I wanted to tell her I didn't care, but the words stuck, because I did care. Not about them, but about her, what they'd make her carry. Later, while she rinsed the cups, I stood close enough to hear the soft clink of porcelain, close enough to smell the faint trace of her perfume. My hand twitched, an impulse to steady hers, to touch the edge of what we both kept pretending wasn't there. She broke the silence first. "You're too young to understand what you're risking." I swallowed hard. "Maybe, but I know what I'd regret." Her shoulders stiffened. She turned, drying her hands on a towel, and for a heartbeat we were too close. Her breath caught. Mine did too. I almost said it. I almost leaned in, but she stepped aside, brushing past me, the towel still in her hands. The space between us felt louder than words. And yet, when I left that night, she stood at the door longer than she needed to, watching, holding on, then letting go. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like we nearly touched something we weren't supposed to, and neither of us knew if we'd survive it. It was late, one of those evenings when the air felt too heavy to stay indoors. She suggested a walk. Just around the block, nothing more. I said yes before she finished the thought. The streets were mostly empty, lamplight spilling across cracked sidewalks. I walked half a step behind her, matching her pace. She held her sweater tighter around her, though it wasn't that cold. We didn't talk much, just fragments. You ever think about leaving this place? I asked. Every day, she murmured, eyes fixed ahead. And then I don't. I wanted to ask why, but the words jammed somewhere between my throat and chest. At the corner, we stopped at a bench under a flickering streetlight. She sat first, arms crossed, gaze somewhere far off. I sat beside her, careful not to sit too close, though my knees still brushed hers lightly. She didn't move. After a long stretch of quiet, she said, "I don't know what you want from me." Her voice wasn't sharp. It was tired, almost pleading. I hesitated. "I don't know either." She let out a breath, half laugh, half ache. "That's worse." A car passed, headlights sweeping over us, then gone. Darkness settled back in. I could feel her trying to put walls up again, and it pushed something raw out of me. "I don't come here for tea, or sugar, or excuses." My voice cracked. "I come because I don't want to be anywhere else." She turned then, finally meeting my eyes. A storm lived in hers. Fear, guilt, something else I couldn't name. "You can't say things like that," she whispered. "But it's true." Her hands clenched the edge of the bench, white-knuckled. She opened her mouth, closed it again. Then softer. "If I let you mean this, I don't know if I can carry it." I swallowed, unsure if she was asking me to answer or just saying it aloud to the night. The silence stretched, our breaths uneven, tangled. Her shoulder brushed mine. Just barely, but she didn't shift away. I thought of leaning closer, just an inch. The space between us begged for it. But instead, I asked quietly, "Would you regret it?" Her lips parted, but no sound came. Only her eyes, searching mine like they already knew the answer. And then, before she spoke, before I moved, the streetlight flickered once more and we both just stayed there, on the edge of something we couldn't name. The night after the bench, I didn't see her. Or the one after that. Her curtains stayed closed, porch light dark. I told myself she was busy, but the absence pressed harder with each evening. On the fourth day, I stopped by the cafe half hoping. She wasn't there. The barista said she hadn't come in all week. It felt strange. Missing someone I wasn't supposed to admit I missed. I tried not to check my phone every hour. Tried not to scroll through old call logs just to see her name. Tried but failed. My fingers hovered over a message more than once. "Are you okay?" Never sent. When I finally saw her again, it was by accident. I was coming back from class when I spotted her at her doorstep, talking to someone. A man older, maybe her brother, maybe not. He carried himself like he belonged there. She laughed at something he said. A soft laugh, but it gutted me. She noticed me watching. Her smile faltered. She gave a small nod. Quick, polite, like we were just neighbors after all. Later that night, I heard faint voices through her wall. Laughter again, but mixed with something heavier. Plates clinking. Doors opening and closing. The next morning, she passed me on the sidewalk. She didn't slow down, didn't stop. Just a quiet morning before she turned the corner. It rattled me more than I wanted to admit. I skipped the cafe, stayed in my apartment pacing, wondering if I'd misunderstood everything. If the moments that felt alive to me were just nothing to her. But then, just when I started to let go, there it was, a knock at my door. When I opened it, no one was there. Just a small bag left on the floor. Inside, a jar of tea leaves, the kind she always brewed. No note, I sat staring at it for what felt like hours. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused, like life forgot to finish the sentence. It was late when I saw her again. The hall light in her apartment spilled faintly into mine, a thin strip under her door. I hesitated, then knocked once, softly. She opened after a pause, sweater pulled tight around her shoulders. No words at first, just a searching look, like she was measuring if she could stand to let me in. "Come in," she said finally. Her kitchen was dim except for the lamp above the sink. The kettle sat half-filled, waiting, as if she'd been expecting company she never asked for. We sat at the table across from each other. Her fingers traced the rim of her mug, slow circles, over and over. I watched, not the mug but her hands, and she noticed. "You shouldn't have come," she whispered. "I know." Silence stretched. The hum of the refrigerator, the faint tick of a clock. She looked at me then, eyes tired but unflinching. "Do you want me? Or do you just want someone to see you?" The words hit harder than I expected. I opened my mouth, closed it, opened it again. Finally, "Both, but only you." Her lips parted, a tremor of breath leaving her. She shook her head, but not in denial. More like she was fighting something she didn't want to win against. "I don't know if I can do this," she admitted. "Every part of it feels wrong." And yet, her voice trailed. I leaned forward slightly, not close enough to touch, but close enough to feel the air shift. "Then tell me to stop. Tell me to go." She didn't. Her eyes glistened, the circles her finger made on the mug stuttering to a halt. The weight of everything pressed down between us. The age, the silence, the neighbors, the lives we weren't supposed to cross. And yet, here we were, too far in to pretend we hadn't stepped over some invisible line. Finally, she set the mug down with a small, decisive sound. Her hand lingered on the table, palm open, not reaching for me, just there. I placed mine beside it, not on top, not entwined, just close enough that the edges of our fingers brushed, skin to skin, a faint spark of something undeniable. Her eyes softened, a small, almost imperceptible smile. "Okay," she whispered. "Nothing more, nothing less, just that." Time passed, not in grand sweeps, but in small, almost unnoticeable shifts. The first shift was hers. Her curtains no longer stayed shut all day. Sometimes, when I left for class, I'd catch her window cracked open, letting the morning air slip in. We never spoke of that night in the kitchen. We didn't need to. Something had settled. Not certainty, not a promise. Just the quiet decision to keep walking beside each other, however uneven the road. I still saw her at the cafe. Thursdays, 8:47 a.m. She'd order black coffee, no sugar. I trailed behind, taking mine with one sugar. Once the barista mixed them up. She smiled faintly, slid the sweeter cup across to me without a word. A small reminder, she still noticed. Always noticed. Sometimes we'd take walks again, back to that bench under the flickering streetlight. She'd sit first, arms folded, but this time I didn't hold myself half a step away. I sat beside her, knees brushing, and she didn't move. In her kitchen, the tea kettle became routine. The circles her finger once traced nervously along the rim of her mug had softened into absent gestures. No tension now, just habit. My hand would rest near hers on the table, edges touching. Not always, not deliberate, but always enough. Neighbors still looked. Friends still asked questions. But the weight wasn't the same. She had stopped bracing against it, and I had stopped pretending it mattered more than the quiet between us. It wasn't perfect. She still carried her silences, the kind that stretched across entire evenings. And I still stumbled over words, unsure if I said too little or too much. But there was warmth now, the kind that stayed even when the cups were empty, even when the light— "I never liked the in-between," she said softly, recalling the story of her husband and his radios. I leaned closer, just enough for her to hear me clearly. "I still do. Makes the silence worth it." Her smile was small, tired, and real, and for the first time I knew we weren't paused anymore. We were living in the sentence as it wrote itself, word by word, day by day. Did this story stay with you? What kind of quiet, real love stories do you want to hear next?